So thank you. Without further ado, I shall begin. And I want to thank Mark, who will be taking over for me as the history takes over me. So, as the transfer occurs, the transfer will occur. You know, asking me to do 40-year history of the Rittenhouse Inn in 60 minutes is a bit tricky, and for anyone who knows me, is a scary idea. It may end up just like my tourism show that would be one program that is now 3. The tourism of Bayfield, but we will try to do this in 1 hour. Thank you so much. You know, you all remember Cinderella. A dream is a wish your heart makes. You all know that song, right? Well, I have to tell you that I think I must divulge something right up front, since it's only fair to be honest here. The truth of this, the honest truth, Mary and I did not plan a business.
Yeah.
We didn't. We really didn't plan a business.
No.
We built a dream. And then we crafted a business to fit. That's really what happened. That's the absolute truth. Now, we'll get more of that later. But the first thing is, I will talk about the discovery of Bayfield. Mary and I were musicians in Madison. Both, we met at the University of Wisconsin in the music department. And we had a great life, actually. We had a wonderful, huge, old Victorian home just south of Madison that we had been working on for just since our marriage. And we were one of these people who I'm sure some of you could relate to, who just visited Bayfield. In our case, on our honeymoon. We had no plan for our honeymoon, mind you, except to drive north. And there is a lot of north in Wisconsin. And we went to a lot of places, but there's nothing that was quite like Bayfield. You know, the first thing we saw was, of course, as you round the corner, that lake. That incredible, incredible lake. We remember that trip so well because we left a storm in Hayward, which is where we were staying. And we arrived in Bayfield to an absolutely sun-drenched day. And one of those days when the lake is sparkling with 1 billion diamonds. And I know you can relate to that. The town was incredibly quiet, however, back in 1969. And in fact, there were for sale signs all over the town. And anyone who knows that history knows that that it was a time when the fishing industry was beginning its downturn. And of course, the lumbering was long gone, the brownstone as well, and even the old original tourism business was pretty different at that time. And as we drove into town and drove around, we were absolutely stunned to find a for sale sign on the beautiful Frank Boutin Jr. house that we now call the Chateau. It was Mose Thino who had the real estate offering, and you remember, some of you probably know Senator Dan Thino. This was his father. And we saw this great big sign on the front lawn, and we saw this incredible place with the original landscaping and magnificent trees, the fountain, the carriage house. And we just couldn't help ourselves. We walked right up to the house and knocked on the door. You can imagine our surprise when it was answered by a nun. The nun opened the door and graciously showed us around. As it turned out, it was being used as the convent. The sale price was $50,000 at the time, and it came furnished. Well, we left Bayfield feeling like we had found some secret jewel in this magical town on Wisconsin's Big Lake. And in succeeding years, we kept visiting, and our fascination grew as the house remained unsold, and the price kept coming down. We kept traversing the town, went to the island, visited the antique shops, and fell more and more in love with our little secret place. And then we began a dream. And the first dream was having a cabin in the north. And in the spring of 1972, as we began traveling north, for the first time with our infant son, Mark, we decided that if this house was still on the market, we were going to place an offer. Sure, why not? Have a little cabin. To our enormous surprise and sadness, the house had sold only weeks prior for $22,000. Interest free, no money down. That was the longest drive home to Madison I ever made. But on that trip, we came to realize the role that a dream plays in one's life. We realized the two of us had actually slowly created a dream to own a house in this special little town. We realized that we needed to come to grips with that dream, either make a plan and move on it, or turn away. So the following spring we returned, despite our previous setback. We went to visit the new owner of the Chateau, Paul Turner. And we discovered from him that there was another exceptional historic home just on the market. In excellent condition, with 7 fireplaces instead of 5. It was located on Rittenhouse Avenue. Well, when we drove up to 301 Rittenhouse Avenue, we were astonished as we realized that we had never seen this house, and we quickly discovered why. The current owner had removed countless thick 50-foot evergreen trees growing from the very porches right out to the street, completely obstructing the house. The trees, fortunately, had caused mildew and fungus to grow and prevented airflow and encouraged rot. So the current owner before us had removed every tree, resodded the grounds, repainted the porches. He then added a new roof, and then he moved inside to start refurbishing the rooms. Well, I wish I could explain my astonishment, for we certainly thought that we knew every house in this town after our 5th year of visits. It felt like, and I mean this sincerely, it felt almost as if it had been built that spring just for us. And not wanting to miss another chance, but finding that Mert Hoyer, the real estate dealer, was out of town. So, not knowing what else to do, we just slipped 5 $100 bills into an envelope with a little note and slid it under his door. That's where the jewelry was. That was his office, right where the little jewelry store is today. Well, you can imagine how surprised he was when he came to work on Monday. Well, with the help of Mary's mom, Junebug, as I called her, we soon had our summer cottage. We arrived the following June in 1974 with our 3-year-old son, Mark, Toll, excited to enjoy our summer away from our busy teaching and music lives in Madison, thinking that we were just going to enjoy some peace and quiet. Well, almost immediately we were beset with calls from lodging owners and the Chamber of Commerce to open some of our bedrooms to guests instead of sending them out of town. I especially remember some of those calls from Jim Jabot. I think some of you remember Jim. Of course. The antique shop down at the end of the street. That's when we discovered that the house had been used by previous owners, most notably the Harwards. Locals knew the history of the house, and they knew that we had purchased a home totally furnished, right down to sheets, towels, china, and a bottle of Dom Perignon. Finally, we gave in, and we took a few guests. We loved it, and the rest, as they say, is history. We went back to Madison that fall of 1974 with a very different dream, a dream of sharing our beautiful home. We returned in June of 1975. We loved the guests, but we were not interested in just traditional lodging. We envisioned a more personal, more intimate kind of space and place. We didn't simply want to rent rooms, as they say. We dreamed of being in the business of creating experiences. We wanted our guests to experience history and culture. So we balanced the modern guest needs with beautiful rooms, quality linens, antiques, original art, and we became the concierge, helping them plan a great visit. But there was a major drawback. The one single bathroom down the hall. So, by 1975, we were already at work putting private bathrooms into the large bedroom closets. And this continued over the next years until all of those rooms had private baths. Now, as an aside, there are very many funny stories related to that one bathroom. But I'm afraid the length of today's program excludes us telling you some of these. But in the meantime, you'll have to buy Mark's new cookbook, which does have lots of stories in it. So, cheap word. Taking the plunge. You know, Eric Hoffer says that the only way to predict the future is to have the power to shape that future. And that's the way we felt. We felt that we were so powerful. We had such an opportunity to shape our own future and maybe even a little bit of Bayfield's, we hoped. And so we found out, however, that you had to have goals, not just dreams, because goals are dreams with deadlines. So by the end of the summer of 1975, we began to again redream the dream. And as we now envisioned it, we could, as the saying goes, have our cake and eat it too. If we started an inn, as they're known out east and in Great Britain, we could have both a restaurant and rooms. So that winter, we built an addition to expand the kitchen for a commercial restaurant. So imagine having a business with all the things you loved. We love people. We love service, hospitality. We love food and preparing it. We loved old houses and restoring them and filling them with restored antiques. We loved music and theater. That's how the wassail dinners got going. We loved to work and live side by side every day. It's really one of the major reasons we did this, because Mary and I met really in a music room, I singing and she playing. And we loved working together. Some couples don't, we do. We loved the idea also of raising our son in a small town atmosphere. We also wanted to be a part of helping Bayfield rise again after the loss of the fishing industry. We loved history. We loved living in it. So this is the kind of dream we dreamed. So then we set out to develop a business around that dream. We believed that little maxim that your life is your message to the world. So make sure it's inspiring. So we had to set goals based on that dream to create our vision, and thus was born the Old Rittenhouse Inn. Now, one of those goals was to develop a restaurant. And it was Mary's vision to open that restaurant that she could head. Her food, her style, her personality was obvious and everywhere. I used to tease dinner guests that if she was too busy, she was way too busy to meet them, but it really didn't matter. She was on their plate. In that summer of 1976, we were very quickly very busy, serving many times 3 seatings 7 days a week. In fact, the inn was truly back then a restaurant with rooms, not as we see it today, the other way around. Mary has amazing gifts, and her multitasking skills are pretty awe-inspiring. She has an amazing memory, and she can remember what each guest ate. And of course, could she cook? One favorite story involved a guest who came 3 times, always ordering a steak and potato, steak medium rare. And on his 4th visit, he ordered Mary's night special, scallops and shrimp in a pastry with a sauce of cream, white wine, and fresh herbs. Mary repeatedly questioned the waiter to make sure that this was the correct man and his order. Over and over she grilled the waiter. Finally, she sent out this order, but with a little personal note that said if it was not to his liking, he ought to know that she had a medium rare steak prepared and a potato. You can imagine his astonishment. I don't know how many of you know Mike Masterson, but that's who that was all those years ago. Mary's restaurant was known for fresh and local, long before that was the buzzword of the restaurant world. Cultivating many local sources for things like wild leeks, fiddlehead ferns, wild blueberries, chokeberries, wild plums, watercress, edible flowers, wild mushroom. Lots of you know Leon Beauchamp, don't you? Well, he is probably, we kept that guy busy, and a lot of other people who went foraging for us. She assembled a collage of very colorful gatherers and growers, enthusiastic about someone with an interest in their knowledge, talents, and products. Soon, her restaurant was known for her hallmark steak stuffed with oysters, melt in your mouth, pork chop, fresh lake trout and whitefish dishes, champagne chicken, whitefish livers, and much, much more. And meanwhile, I was busy preparing fresh breads and memorable desserts daily. My mother, by the way, was a professional baker, and developing the Sunday sauces that we still serve. Mary's mother, I told you, Junebug, whom I dearly loved, bought the little house right across the avenue from Vermont and Harriet Johnson, and lived there till her death. I must tell you something about that, because you just know when I talk about Junebug. An amazing woman. I wish you could have all known her. I wish you'd lived to the age of my mother. My mother's still alive at 97. But Junebug was this incredible woman, and in fact, I loved her really so much. I'll never forget when I decided that I was going to go ask her if I could marry her daughter. And so we had a wonderful dinner together. She was an amazing cook, and what a garden she had. And I asked her, and I said, you know, Junebug, I really want to marry your daughter, but if it's not okay, can I marry you? We always attribute some of our early success to the major article that appeared in the Minneapolis Tribune back in 1976. Back then, Bayfield was, of course, the playground for Minneapolis, yet it is, and the phone soon began to ring despite the byline, "Linen caught blood." That was the byline on this article in the Minneapolis Tribune. A reference to when the Rittenhouse Inn was owned by Dr. Mertens, and it was used as his little hospital. This article was followed by an unending series of great articles over the ensuing years in newspapers and magazines of note, and whose readers were our perfect potential guests. This photo of Bill DePerry, holding whitefish livers for an article in the New York Times. They did a wonderful article on whitefish livers, the ultimate gourmet or gourmand treat from the Great Lake. One afternoon, Mary was on the front porch swing, taking a short break before the final prep of the evening meal, when a woman struggled up the stairs, obviously exhausted from the long haul up the hill. Mary asked if she would like a glass of fresh squeezed lemonade, and they shared a little chat and swing. Little did Mary know that this was the well-known writer, Mimi Eller. And she could less probably have guessed that Mimi would be inspired to write an article on Inns of the Midwest for Gourmet magazine. And even less would she have dreamed that our cheesecake would be the front cover. Well, certainly that front cover was a high point for Mary, but there were many, many others that brought terrific dining and lodging traffic to our inn, and always, as we had hoped, a great spillover for the little town and the whole region. And from Wisconsin Trails to Midwest Living, the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune and many others, we were happy for ourselves and equally thrilled for the growing awareness of this little town on the Great Lake, the place we loved. Our dream was always larger than ourselves. We really envisioned our business to be a part and a help to this special place. John Maxwell said that goals may give focus, but dreams give power. And we certainly worked to focus our dreams. In 1984, our little 4 guest rooms, that's all we had, were often booked for the summer months well over a year in advance. And we were turning away many people. We were thrilled until we realized that potential guests were giving up, as we were always full. They weren't calling. Not a good marketing plan. Folks were getting the word that they shouldn't call because we would be filled. So in 1984, we drew up plans to double the size of the inn, greatly expand our kitchen, and triple the number of rooms that we had there from 4 to 12. Work began in 1985 after the Apple Festival with Greg Carrier Construction. And the addition was closed in by winter so interior work could commence. But we hit a small stumbling block. As our addition took form, we were struck by how totally ugly that box was that we had designed. And our aesthetic took over. And we agreed we had to do something quick. So we decided that we needed to fill in the space of the entire backside of the house. And a tower was designed that would be both appropriate and attractive to our little Victorian cottage. So the house grew now to 10,000 square feet. And the addition would go from a $250,000 project to well over $500,000. 2 months later, we encountered another surprise that caused a conundrum of truly epic proportions. The Chateau was back on the market. But not for $22,000. But Mary was adamant we couldn't pass up this opportunity and let someone else buy the best house in town. The house that we fell in love with. And what if they opened an inn? So she set about to make it happen, right in the middle of this other project. So we created a partnership with our contractor and friend, Greg Carrier, and a silent partner. And we purchased the house And we immediately had two massive projects going on at one time. And compared to the Rittenhouse Inn building, the Chateau was something of a wreck. With water pouring through the walls for years, the tower of the house had shrunk 4 inches. The roof was a disaster, and so was most of the rest of the exterior. And to that enormous task ahead, you have to add rewiring and replumbing the whole house, adding 4 bathrooms, remodeling the 4 we had, taking the shag carpets off the wall. Yes, shag carpets off the wall. Anyone who was in that house when Paul owned it can remember. And replaster everywhere. Oh, and did I forget to tell you? Be open for business by July. No, June. And that meant it was my job to plan and execute all of the decorating. For now, 14 new rooms. Oops. Well, easy answer. We just emptied my Hayward antique shop. Oh, did I forget to tell you about that? The Hayward antique shop? Sorry. We purchased an antique store inventory in 1978 here in Bayfield from John and Jean Haveman, right between Bates Art Barn and the post office. That building went in there. That was their store. And I began an antique business, Rittenhouse Memory, because we bought the historic Stark store, today Ethel's. So we bought the Stark store, bought the antique inventory, started our antique business. And for 2 summers, after 2 summers, I realized that I really didn't have an antique store. What I had was a museum. Not a good time to sell antiques in Bayfield, I guess. So without batting an eye, we simply bought the carriage antiques in Hayward. And we were off running one of the finest established antique business in the entire state. If any of you were around and went out to see that wonderful place in Hayward, we lived right, it was right on the Namakokan River, outside of town. And if one of my favorite customers was Mary Rice. It was a huge challenge just to keep that store stocked with high quality pieces. So I used numerous pickers for help. And I ran the shop back then, and Mary ran the inn, and we traveled back and forth on Highway 63 a whole lot. Okay, back to the inn. As I mentioned, we robbed the antique store for beautiful lamps, furniture, and accessories. And then it was my job to follow the electricians and plumbers and plasterers at the Chateau with wallpaper and paint pails. And by July, we had 7 new rooms open between the 2 properties, with more to follow throughout the year. But the complete renovation of the Chateau building took us 5 years, as we had to work increasingly around our fast-growing number of guests. Compromises had to be made. For example, the whirlpools were not installed until 1986 and 1987. How well I remember those deadlines, which were critical, because our staff was filling those rooms over the phone with little or no idea what the finished product was even be. They had no idea even what color the room was going to be. If somebody called and asked, well, now what is that room like? And they would just tell a story, I guess. I remember meeting the deadline of one of those rooms especially. The painters and the wallpaperers finished their work at 3 p.m. for a 3:30 check-in. The guests were downstairs in the foyer being detained by the desk staff as we brought in the cleaners, followed by the maintenance crew who put up the bed. And while the housekeepers were quickly dressing the bed and setting up towels and accessories, the crew put up the art on the walls and brought in antiques. And then we all ran down the back stairs exhausted as the new guests came up the front. Amazing, but it's the true story. And it happened more than once. We discovered that our new partnership with Greg Carey was an absolute dream. And we began finding other properties. We bought the Silver Nail building, and then the Hadley House. The Silver Nail, as you see it here, is right across from Rittenhouse Inn in the corner. And at the time when we bought it, it was home to about 23 people. It was a rental, and it had several families and more. There were 2 dead cars in the front. And it was causing a lot of problem because there were a lot of parties and things going on, and our guests would call us and knock on our door in the middle of the night and say, we got a problem, something's going on over us. And it was Bill McCarty who owned the building. And so we called Bill McCarty at midnight, and you can imagine he was excited to come over and straighten the problem out. So finally, after a few of those excitements, he came over to Mary and myself, and he said, I've got a solution. The place is yours. You're going to buy it. Well, we did. And the Silver Nail at first became staff housing, including us, as we were working in another room in the inn. And the Hadley House was to become what is now Grey Oak Guest House, with 4 beautiful guest rooms. This is, of course, now owned by Susan Larson and Neil Hogg. Next was the 6 lots with a brick building, which had been an area supply station for a dairy with storage space. That's up on 7th, right between 7th and 8th Street. Some of you probably know where that is. It has been our storage since then. Then came the Theodore Ernst home, which you all know of as the fancy Victorian gingerbread house right behind the gas station. We bought that the day Mary had her stroke. We then bought the Ernst homestead that was right behind it, right across the alley from that. And finally we added the John Bailey house. Oh my, there's lots of stories about that, but we don't have time. In the end, after several restructurings, we ended up with 4 buildings and 20 guest rooms. Somewhere I read that giving up on your goal because of one setback is like slashing 3 tires because you have a flat. Well, we, in 1992, had a sudden challenge. Probably the most powerful event to shape our lives. Mary suffered massive cerebral hemorrhage on February 25th. During an ice storm, which prevented quick medical intervention. And after 3 hospitals and 7 hours, she was finally operated on to cauterize the bleed. But this and the bleed itself destroyed a large portion of her brain, affecting her speech, memory, and more. She was 49 and paralyzed on her dominant right side. No one can be replaced. And in an intimate duo like ours, it was difficult. But just in the business alone, it took 5 or 6 people to take over her jobs. And that was just the beginning. I closed the antique business in Hayward, and I came home to cook and run the inn while trying to visit her in the rehab in Duluth. We worked on one of our properties to establish a home for return that would be wheelchair friendly. And thus began a phase of restructuring the inn. We pulled in our expansion plans, sold some properties, and tried to involve Mary as best we could. And over time, we deeply questioned the direction that would be best for us and for the inn. We went so far as to leave the inn. We hired an innkeeper, and Mary and I went to Santa Barbara, California, where I spent 3 years as the executive director of the Professional Association of Innkeepers International, the educational service organization for the world of bed and breakfast. Following this 3-year stint, we moved to Asheville, North Carolina, to establish a school to teach future innkeepers. And it was during this year that we realized that we really wanted to be back home. And so we returned to Bayfield. It was the right decision. The next year, our son Mark and his wife Wendy asked to join us in business, having just had their first child, Kyra June, named after the June bug. We were thrilled. We had never spoken to Mark in all the years about being a part of the family business because we wanted him to follow his dreams as we had ours. The transition began slowly at first, but it gathered speed as everyone became more comfortable. We never thought of the inn moving beyond our generation. It is as it was a very personal dream and a very demanding one. We knew, however, that many of our staff had come to share in both that dream. It wasn't ours alone. For example, my sister Julie was certainly one of those people, and she's with us today, as indispensable as ever. Then came the Great Recession. And thank God we had a couple of great years after Mark and Wendy joined us, so I think they would have all gone back to business school or something. And gradually the late 90s into, actually the late 90s and into the 2000s was really a very good time for the inn. And even 9/11 didn't slow business. One explanation was always that people gave that the whole bed and breakfast industry was busy through that time, was that 9/11 frightened people away from big cities. And so they went to vacation in spots like Bayfield, Wisconsin. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to the new generation. Mark.
Thanks, Dan. So I'm just going to kind of just briefly cap things off here. Of course, I flew in last night for Mary's party, and boy, are my arms tired. No, I was up late with that, so just very nice to be with you here today. I want to talk a little bit about regrowth and renewal, because certainly after the Great Recession, as we call it, we knew we had to get back on point, and that was going to be kind of a multi-pronged attack. That we had to not only invest a lot of money into our infrastructure of our business and fixing it up, but we needed great pictures and great marketing and a new website and all of these kinds of things. So it was going to be a lot of work. And I know personally, as our marketing director, I think our marketing had become a bit stagnant. And we had all these beautiful rooms, we had great dinners, but business was off. And it had been since the recession started. And so we wanted to really kind of show the world again what we had to offer. And we just didn't have the photography to do it. And it was a great revelation to us to see how much difference good photography can make in your business, and a great website. It has been, to me, in my mind, all the difference. Of course, everybody wants to take a little bit of credit when things go well, so and it takes everybody to make it go well, but you can be the best in the world, and if people can't see you and want to be in that photo, want to be the person in that room, or having that experience, then you're going to be missing out. And so that had become pretty apparent to us. So you see these photos were taken by Christian Gianelli, and we flew him in from Philadelphia twice over the course of the year in 2013, I believe, as we were kind of gearing up for another big project, which I'll mention in a moment. But having him here was really transformative, I think, and these images, you just, unless you can really light something perfectly, get the colors right, you know, I had been doing all of that stuff on my own for the end, and I did my best. But at some point, you have to realize when to bring in a pro. So with the new photos, we launched this new website. It has been 3 years now. So this is now officially an old website. Another couple years, it will be an antique website. So then we can send it to the dustbins of history again. But you know, we'll keep updating always and refreshing. And certainly we have a lot of new pictures now that we have to take because of all of the other improvements and things that have been going on. Yeah, so with this website, I just wanted to say that, you know, we wanted to launch this thing. The idea was to keep it real simple and uncluttered, lots of big pictures, lots of white space. It wasn't an easy task because we just feel like we had so much information. We wanted to try to get across to people about lodging, dining, weddings, special events, cookbooks, CDs, concerts, just all the different things. And so the way we did that actually was by creating micro-sites, which are all within the main website. And this is something that larger companies with multiple product lines, like a Dodge or something, will often do to kind of keep everything under one container. So that's what all of these little things on the top, of course it won't work now, but if you hover over them, these little they call them macro menus will come up, and they have rich data. You can pick rooms right from the top there and show pictures, and it's just really kind of neat technology. I can switch there to the slides, please. This was a project that I've wanted to do for forever. Mom wrote our first cookbook, of course, just before her stroke, and she was not finished. And Dad and another friend of ours took over that process on top of everything else that summer that was going on, and finished the first cookbook. It had been out of print though now for 20 years or something, a long time. Been out of print, and the company that made it was out of business as well. So we weren't able to get new copies, and people were always asking for that cookbook. And so I wanted to initially just revise and expand it a little bit and put it out again, was the idea. And of course, as you start any project like that, soon you realize you want to do more, and it gets bigger and bigger. And so finally, when I met with Lake Superior Magazine, who was our publisher on this, we had a wonderful meeting, and we just agreed about just about everything. We wanted to be a, what do you call it, coffee table book with beautiful pictures, and you could just open up to any page and kind of find something neat. Of course, great recipes, and also the history, which is of course very important to my family. So we made a real effort to have our history and a little bit of Bayfield's history as well. I did find I've made a little mistake or two since then, which the community has been wonderful to point out. Nothing too incredibly major, thankfully, but I will have another crack at it, I guess, when we reprint, so I'll make that little edit. But what a fun process that was, and really, again, the whole team coming together to make it happen, from our chef helping me with the recipe testing and the editing work, and of course all the photography. So it launched in 2014, and we received 2 Midwest Book Awards for the book, gold medals, both of them, one for cookbook and also one for historical vignette. So I thought that was kind of cool that they did notice that we really had paid attention to the history there. So while all this is going on, we're also going on full steam with improvements to the properties and the wonderful sandstone retaining wall around the Rittenhouse. which I dearly love, had been failing for years, as I'm sure all of you could see. And we had repaired and replaced sections over the years, but obvious, I think it was that it was time for a more permanent solution. And I remember sitting in my office, which is in the basement, as this was going on. Now I'm gonna cry. It was just like having your teeth all ripped out of your head. You could just feel these chunks of brownstone sucking out of the earth, and it was horrible. And I finally just left and went home and for it again. There's another one here. You all saw it. It was just awful. It was just horribly ugly and very necessary because it was falling apart. And I think the saddest part to me that day was I had realized that I hadn't told them to save this little block that my my grandpa had written my name on back in '79. But let's me just say that there's nothing sexy about building a retaining wall. Even if it's 500 feet long. In the past, when we created new rooms or menu items or things like this, there was always some kind of immediate reward and gratification and feedback from our guests saying, "Oh, we just love it. I can't believe it." Well, here, there's really not much of that, but actually there was, and in hindsight, I think so many people have come up to us and said that what a big improvement and how they appreciated it and understood how hard it was for us to tear that wall out that we love, and that was, literally hewn from the stones right around us here and replace it. But that is what you have to do sometimes, is just move on. And so we broke ground on that in 2015, and we can't be any more happy really with the results. And I think my greatest joy is I won't have to worry about it ever again in my lifetime. And also we got rid of that awful telephone pole, which you saw in the first pictures at the end. All my life I've hated that thing and wished for its demise. And so I have video of it going down, and as it's coming down, I didn't realize I was doing this, but I'm like cackling maniacally, like a villain in a Star Wars movie or something. I see this thing come down, and it was a great joy for me. So flip it here. That's before it was painted. After. Believe it or not, Dad actually kind of came up and said, "I think we should leave it white." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" So anyway. I don't know. Let's see. All right, a couple more here. We're almost done. Oh, and of course, you have to fix the chimney too, because once you start doing things, you see everything else that's wrong. And we were having birds fly down in that thing in winter, and pieces were falling off, as you can see, probably not very safe. So I just thought, wow, that is a scary scaffolding deal up there. And I'm so glad I'm not up there doing it myself. Now, as a kid, I would have been up there in a heartbeat. But, so painting. 2015 also, same year as the wall, we painted the entire chateau by hand. Big thanks and credit to Tad Pavla and Mark Wolfslagle. Those two basically painted the whole thing by hand themselves. Did an amazing job, and it only took 5 months. It kept being so close, and I'd think, well, we're done, right? And Tad would be like, no, I see that there, that there. And it just kind of went on and on, but just really love how it turned out, and so thankful for all the great job they did with that. This year we're finishing touches on the Rittenhouse Inn. We've painted that, and we've got just a little bit more to finish up, and then we'll be calling the photographers back in for another round of fun with all of that. And also this winter, we're working indoors, doing all sorts of new carpets and bathroom work and just anything, because as anyone knows, when you have an old building like this, there's never ever a shortage of projects and new things to do, and your list is always growing. So I just know that we really enjoy the work and seeing it happen, and also having the dialogue with mom and dad, and making sure that hopefully we're not going out of bounds with the things that they would like to do as well with the inn, and keep you on the same page with that. So a couple of future things, we've got that carriage house up at the Chateau, and it's a beautiful, beautiful little old house. Needs a lot of work.
Okay, but Tara and Max.
Yes, well, but we do have the new generation coming in, so maybe it'll fall to them. But hopefully we'll get to the carriage house before they take over. That's the plan anyway. Kyra started waiting tables for us this summer. Our daughter is 12, and when you're 12, you can work for your parents in Wisconsin. And so I've been planning all along to have her, start in the dishes, or the turnip pile or something, something on the bottom end of the run, when she insisted that she was going to be a waitress. And I said, well, you can't just jump over, you've got to pay your dues a little bit. She said, well, I know exactly what I'm doing, Dad. And so summer came around, and unexpectedly, 2 of our fine servers left right at the beginning of the summer, and we had no choice. So she went quickly to the wait staff and worked on these breakfasts all summer, and did just fantastic. She exceeded all of our expectations, and really did wonderful. So I think the future is in good hands if they should choose that. But again, like Dad and Mom, I certainly won't force them to go down that chute. I think they both have lots of talents and energy that may go in other directions, and we'll find out as we come. But she certainly, Kyra that is, certainly has lots of strong opinions. Just like her grandmother and her mother. So she got a double dose of that, and I'm sure that she will be here part of the community as well. So I just want to thank you all so much for having us today, and giving us this time to tell our little story, and share our pictures, and look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.
Thanks especially to the love of my life, Mary. Give her a hand.